On a cold autumn evening, thick fog rolled across the old docks of Plymouth Harbor while young David Rowe worked alone inside an abandoned warehouse. Waves crashed against the pier and the wind whistled through the masts of anchored ships. David was 23 years old and survived by working on merchant vessels, secretly dreaming of real adventures. That night would change his life forever. While moving old dusty crates, one suddenly broke apart. Something wrapped in dirty cloth fell onto the floor. Curious, David picked it up carefully. Inside was a rusty metal tube. When he opened it, he discovered an old yellow map and a black medallion engraved with a skull crossed by two swords. Written in faded ink on the corner of the map were the words, "The treasure of Captain Morcant lies where the sea swallows the light." David had heard stories about Captain Morcant since childhood. He had been one of the most feared pirates of the Atlantic Ocean. His legendary ship, the Night Raven, had disappeared more than 200 years ago together with mountains of stolen gold. Many had searched for the treasure. None had returned. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed behind him. "Put the map down, boy." David turned around quickly. In the doorway stood an old sailor wearing a dark coat and a black eye patch. "Who are you?" David asked. "A man who knows exactly what you found." The old man stepped closer. "My name is Elias Drake, and that map brings death." David laughed nervously. "It's just another pirate legend." "No," Elias replied coldly. "It's real." He revealed a long scar across his arm. "My father died searching for Morcant's treasure, and the people hunting it still exist." As if his words had summoned danger itself, the warehouse doors burst open. 3 armed men rushed inside. "Take the map," one shouted. Elias pushed David toward the back exit. "Run!" Bullets smashed into wooden crates as the two escaped through the warehouse. David held the map tightly against his chest. They ran through narrow streets, soaked in rain, until they reached a hidden tavern near the harbor. Inside smelled of rum and smoke. "Listen carefully," Elias whispered. "The map is incomplete. 5 hidden symbols reveal the path to the island where Morcant buried his treasure." David unfolded the map beneath candlelight. Strange markings appeared that he had never noticed before. "Where is the island?" he asked. Elias stared toward the storm outside. "In the triangle of shadows." The entire tavern fell silent. For 3 days they sailed across violent seas aboard Elias's ship, the Sea Phantom. Dark clouds covered the sky, while massive waves slammed against the vessel. David stood on deck staring at the black medallion. "Why does my family have anything to do with Morcant?" he asked. Elias lit an old lantern. "Your father was a navigator, but before him, your grandfather was a pirate." David laughed in disbelief. "You're joking." "Not at all." Elias opened an ancient journal. "One of your ancestors sailed with Captain Morcant. Before dying, he stole part of the map and the medallion." David finally understood why people were hunting him. That night the ship's radar suddenly stopped working. "That's impossible," Elias muttered. A thick fog surrounded the Sea Phantom completely. Then they heard it, the sound of an old ship bell echoing through the darkness. Moments later, a giant black ship emerged from the mist without making a sound. "The Night Raven," Elias whispered. The legendary pirate ship looked untouched despite disappearing centuries ago. Dark figures stood motionless on its deck. "Are those people?" David asked. "I don't think so." Suddenly, the ghost ship vanished back into the fog. The next morning, they discovered a rocky island covered in dense jungle. "We found it," Elias said. As they stepped onto the shore, David felt an unnatural cold in the air. Fresh footprints covered the sand. "We're not alone." Deep inside the jungle, they found ancient stone ruins covered with strange symbols. David touched one of the carvings. The ground shook violently. A hidden entrance opened inside the cliff. Cold air rushed out from the darkness below. "The treasure is inside," Elias said. Before they could enter, armed pirates appeared from the trees. Leading them was a woman wearing a pirate hat and carrying a curved sword. "Thank you for leading us here," she said with a smile. "Who are you?" David demanded. "Captain Isabella Vane." She raised her pistol. "And the treasure belongs to me." David and Elias were forced into the tunnels at gunpoint. The walls were wet and covered with ancient symbols. Every step echoed through the darkness. "Morcant loved traps," Elias warned. Isabella laughed. "Then let's hope your old friend knows the way." Soon they reached a giant chamber where the floor was divided into stone tiles. At the center lay the skeleton of a pirate. David noticed dozens of arrows buried in the walls. "Don't step anywhere." One of Isabella's men ignored the warning. The moment he stepped forward, the walls exploded with flying arrows. The pirate fell dead instantly. Everyone froze. Elias studied the symbols carefully. "We must follow the star pattern from the medallion." David slowly stepped across the safe tiles while the others followed. After escaping the trap, they entered another chamber filled with gold. Coins, jewels, and statues sparkled in the lantern light. "We're rich," one pirate shouted. But Elias looked worried. "This isn't the real treasure." At the far end of the room stood a black chest marked with the skull symbol. Isabella approached it greedily. Finally, she opened the chest. Inside was no gold, only a journal and a golden key. David opened the journal. The final page was written in blood. "Whoever finds the key shall awaken the curse of the sea." A terrifying roar echoed through the tunnels. The ground trembled violently. "What have you done?" Elias shouted. Dark shadows moved inside the walls. Ghostly sailors with hollow eyes emerged from the darkness. Captain Morcant's cursed crew had awakened. Isabella's pirates opened fire in panic, but the bullets passed straight through the ghosts. The cursed sailors attacked silently, their icy touch freezing skin instantly. "Run!" Elias yelled. Everyone sprinted through collapsing tunnels while the ghost crew chased them. David held the golden key tightly. It had become burning hot. "The key controls the curse," he shouted. They finally reached a circular chamber with a massive stone door. At its center was the same symbol engraved on the medallion. Elias understood immediately. The key belongs there. But Isabella shoved him aside. "The treasure is mine." She inserted the key into the mechanism. The giant door slowly opened. Beyond it stood a vast chamber overflowing with mountains of gold and diamonds. At the center sat a throne. On the throne rested the skeleton of Captain Morcant. The moment Isabella touched the treasure, the skeleton's eyes burst into green flames. The air instantly turned freezing cold. The skeleton slowly stood up. "No one steals my treasure." Its voice sounded like the ocean itself speaking from the depths. The pirates screamed and ran in terror. Morcant raised his sword, and the walls began collapsing around them. David noticed the medallion glowing brightly. "Elias, I think the medallion can stop the curse. Place it on the throne." Elias shouted. David ran across the collapsing chamber while stones crashed around him. Captain Morcant charged toward him with his sword raised high. At the last second, David placed the medallion into the throne. A blinding light exploded across the chamber. One by one, the ghost sailors vanished into the air. Morcant let out one final terrifying scream before turning to dust. The entire island began shaking violently. "We have to get out now," Elias shouted. David, Elias, and the remaining survivors ran toward the shore as the island collapsed behind them. The jungle burned with fire while massive rocks crashed into the sea. The Sea Phantom was still anchored near the coast. They climbed aboard just as the island began sinking beneath the waves. Suddenly, Isabella appeared through the smoke carrying a heavy sack filled with gold. "I'm not leaving without the treasure," she yelled. But the ground beneath her cracked open. She disappeared into the darkness together with the gold. David stood silently on the deck, watching the cursed island vanish beneath the ocean forever. Everything seemed over. Elias walked beside him. "Your father would have been proud of you." David looked down at the medallion. It was now cold and lifeless. "And the treasure?" he asked. Elias smiled. "Sometimes the real treasure isn't gold." David laughed. "That sounds like something a man says after losing a fortune." The old sailor grinned and pulled a small bag from his coat. Inside were several diamonds he had secretly taken before the island collapsed. "Well," Elias said, "we didn't lose everything." Both men laughed as the Sea Phantom sailed toward the rising sun. For the first time in days, the sea was calm. David believed the adventure was finally over. But later that night, when he entered his cabin, he froze. Captain Morcant's journal was lying on the table. Impossible. He had left it inside the temple. Slowly, David opened the journal. A new message had appeared on the final page. "The true treasure has not yet been found." A cold chill ran down his spine. Then he noticed something drawn on the back of the page. Another map. Somewhere beyond the horizon, another hidden treasure was waiting. And the adventure had only just begun.